thrilled to welcome you to the New York Public Library's Port Richmond branch for what promises to be an engaging conversation about staying secure in an AI-powered world. The New York Public Library is dedicated to inspiring lifelong learning, advancing knowledge, and strengthening our communities. We achieve this by providing essential, no-cost resources, programs, and services to everyone, regardless of their background, financial status, or beliefs. In a time of rising misinformation, inequality, and division, the role of public libraries has never been more vital. Our aim is to remove barriers and help you all reimagine your lives, careers, abilities, and place in this world by solidifying our libraries as engines of economic mobility. This is the fifth in an 8-part panel series presented in collaboration with Women Tech Exchange, designed to facilitate community discussions on the diverse impacts of AI. The topic for today is a direct effort to fulfill that mission. Furthermore, this series marks the launch of the NYPL AI Literacy Initiative. This fall, we will be offering a variety of hands-on, practical, and educational AI classes available online, in person, and asynchronously. While our segment will officially begin at the end, our Q&A segment will officially begin at the end of this panel, you can go ahead and click the QR code to start submitting any questions you have so you don't forget them. Please note that you may need to connect to our Wi-Fi to get access to the form to go ahead and complete. And now I'd like to introduce our moderator, Quiescence Phillips. Quiescence is the head of Cloud and AI Security at Kroll, recognized for developing comprehensive security strategies that build resilient organizations through both cloud and on-premise architectures. In fact, she developed and implemented one of the first of its kind centralized threat management programs for New York City. She is an NYU adjunct professor and brings a unique cross-domain expertise in security operations, incident response, threat intelligence, cloud security, risk management, and cyber resilience. Quiescence has been recognized as Best of New York by City Tech Foundation and awarded Security Team of the Year for Public Sector by FireEye. Please welcome Quiescence Phillips.
I appreciate that introduction, Dr. Brandy. And I want to now introduce the rest of the panelists. Christina, Michelle, and Efstratios, please join me. So as they get seated, I'll start to introduce the three of them. Christina is a seasoned cybersecurity and technology executive with over 2 decades of cross-domain experience leading enterprise security, cloud architecture, and identity programs. As an information security officer and trusted advisor, and in her current role as Senior Director of Information Security at the New York Giants, football Giants, she blends technical depth with strategic leadership to drive resilience, regulatory alignment, and business impact. Her career spans diverse industries, including financial services, big tech, and professional sports, bringing a unique perspective to every challenge. Christina is also a published O'Reilly author and is passionate about making security and technology accessible, inclusive, and actionable for all. Excuse my allergies. Michelle Smith, to the far right. Michelle is a PM director focused on driving AI transformation across legal and procurement operations at Google. During her almost 10-year career at Google, she has worked on products managing security, compliance, and privacy risk across many Google products, including Google Cloud Platform. In Google Cloud, she was responsible for infrastructure products that provide transparency around data access and internal data governance operations on the handling of personal data. Michelle has dedicated her career at Google to ensuring that its product portfolio visibly demonstrates that earning and strengthening user trust is core to its mission. Prior to Google, Michelle spent 10 years at Microsoft. She is a DC native and currently resides in Brooklyn, New York with her 2 children. Thank you for coming to New York, Michelle. And last but not least, Stratios Gavis, we passionately refer to him as Strat, is the Deputy CISO for Public Safety at New York City Office of Technology and Innovation, New York City Cyber Command, where he oversees the security and strategic direction of the world's 911 operation, emergency radio networks, and critical public safety infrastructure. He helped build New York City's first citywide vulnerability management program, scaling from 0 to 400,000 endpoints across over 100 agencies, and established the city's OT and ICS security and IoT security programs. A lot of acronyms, including assessments of water treatment facilities and traffic systems spanning 12,000 plus intersections. Earlier in his career, he helped develop regulatory and cybersecurity policy at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and taught cybersecurity at NYPL and U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. So that's our panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I think what gets me excited about this group of panelists is that we all come from different industries, different backgrounds, and the topic at hand, AI security, is something that is represented in each of our areas, right? We come from, let's say, 4 different worlds, but the risk of AI is present in every single one of them, and I think we'll all bring different perspectives to this conversation. So, Michelle, you spent, 10 years plus inside the products that manage people's security and privacy? Can you walk us through, let's say, a normal day? Someone's phone, their email inbox, their search bar, AI is already there. So how do people think about, the decisions that AI is making?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think a lot of people have recently started thinking about AI as their personal assistant because of the growth of large language models. That's like ChatGPT, Siri, those types of things. But AI, like machine learning and computer vision, those things have been around for a long time and impacting your everyday life. Matter of fact, on the way over here, I was talking in the car about how most of the prices you see when you go into a store or the inventory in a grocery store has all been determined by AI, right? It's impacting our lives every day. And so I think like that's one of the critical things that people are missing about how AI is all around them and what it knows about you. I think you mentioned your phones. When you think about your phone, you have to think about not only the searches that you make on your phones, but that the apps that you interact with on your phone. There's a variety. There is now, bio information about you, your face, your fingerprint, all of that can, your voice, right? A lot of people talk about, why is Siri, I'm not talking to you, Siri, or I'm not talking to you, Google, right? All of that is information that can be used by various forms of AI to give you a different experience with online applications and, as I said, with everyday life.
What do you think are one of the ways in which people interact with AI and maybe don't realize it?
Another way that you interact with AI, and I'm pretty sure you don't realize this, is the things you don't see. A lot of times AI is in the background trying to prevent you from seeing things. For example, when you search for something, a lot of people don't know this, but we have to do so much work to make sure that the things that you're not actually searching for don't come up and the relevant things come up to you. Otherwise, you would see a very dark internet if we didn't use AI to scale to all the things, because you may search for a hat and you would see the darkest parts of the internet for such a simple search like hat. So like that's one way that we're leveraging AI to kind of help you, which is like to keep all of the content that you don't actually want to see and that is kind of dark away from you. But also, as I mentioned before, like a lot of people don't think that when they go to a store and they receive a coupon, that AI was involved in that. But machine learning was used for prediction for quite some time to predict the behaviors of people so that they can give you the right coupon at the right time so that you can spend the money they want you to spend. Right? So like that's another way that like AI is just involved in your everyday life and you may not even realize it.
So Strad, I want to get your perspective from a city scale. We're talking about maybe a user's interaction with AI, knowingly or unknowingly, but for you, from a public safety perspective, you have to think about this across 8 million residents in New York. Like, what should we be thinking about from AI-enabled risk at that scale?
Yeah. So I think from the city's perspective, again, like, not
your views are your own.
the city, and, importantly note, I think the city has an interesting role in that it has to think about both the information it's presenting out to the population, as well as the data that it is handling and services that it deals with. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, the AI is helping and hurting, because it helps accelerate the attacks, it helps accelerate the defenses. So there's really like just a speed increase across the board.
Lisa, put your mic up.
Oh, how's that better?
Much better.
Okay.
I can hear you better
Okay.
too. Would you say that threats are hitting New Yorkers differently than they're hitting others?
I think I've always sort of found that New York is a bit of a microcosm of the rest of the country. Maybe not the rest of the world in general, but and so in that way, what we're seeing here, we're seeing everywhere. So no, in that way, but it's not it's not to say that we're not seeing all of the troubles. I think we have all of the things here in New York, as I like to say sometimes. So we get all the problems as well.
Fair enough. So Christina, 2 decades across many industries, more than 2 decades across many industries. What AI-powered threats has perhaps surprised you? Maybe something that's different than what you've been accustomed to over the past years?
I think for me, it's been the whole rise of like deep fakes, and specifically DPRK, which is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and more specifically, there's a situation where Korean IT workers are presenting to be other people using deepfake technology, AI technology, to get jobs in the States, and that's happening more and more. That's been surprising. I think it likely happened in the past, but now because the tools are so accessible now that anyone and everyone can access them and use them for bad things and for good things, but mostly for bad things.
Can we talk about that a little bit more? So let's say using the deepfakes or any type of voice cloning, mm-hmm. Thinking about our audience here, if they are the targets on the other end of that, what are they experiencing?
So a popular one that I think a lot of people share is you will receive a call from a family member, maybe your child, and it will be your child's voice, right? And it may be like, Mom, I need help. I'm stuck or something's happening, right? They will be in distress, but it's not your child, right? It's someone else that has cloned your child's voice, pretending to be your child, and potentially trying to get a ransom, trying to get you to, send money. So basically trying to leverage a vulnerability, which is you love your child, you love your family member, to get something out of you, right? And that's been happening more and more. One thing, I know you haven't asked for a solution because it's so prevalent, but one thing, I have 3 kids myself, and one thing that I've shared with my kids is that we have to have a code word. And so that if anything ever happens, what is the code word? And it's actually the code word we use for our alarm system. So they all know it. And I talk to them about this. I show them examples. I show them videos. And I tell them, like, if it sounds like me or if it sounds like you, the first question I'm going to say is, what is the code word? right? And if it's not the code word, they don't give it to me, it's not them. So I would encourage everyone to think of a code word. Do not say it out loud. Do not share it with anyone outside of your family, and encourage the same, right? But it can happen to anyone and everyone at any time, and you won't know it. You'll just think it's an emergency, so.
And that's a really great point, because AI is here, right? And it's beneficial to many of our lives. So we shouldn't fear it, but we need to be equipped, right? We need to be aware and understand some of the risk and be able to safeguard ourselves in the right way. So Strat, from the public safety perspective, are AI-generated scams showing up as any types of crimes that New York City is seeing or responding to?
So New York City Cyber Command, where I'm at,
Okay.
doesn't respond directly to that. We manage the city's information system, but largely it is happening more broadly. Those organizations that deal with that directly are NYPD, FBI, and facilities like that. If you have these sort of issues that come up, identity government sites are there to kind of protect. In some ways, there's other CISA organizations or websites that provide some of that.
But we do have, let's say, like business email compromise
For sure.
impacting, or different types of threats that New York City Cyber Command does face. And
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
sure AI definitely enhances some of that.
It does, yeah. It makes again sort of the pace of things happen much faster. So we're seeing more of that directed. The ability to identify them just visually is harder nowadays with the benefit of AI making things easier and faster. So again, it's a scale problem, and we in the city deal with scale.
So this question might be maybe a little bit difficult for you to answer, because like I imagine, PD and other agencies are more involved in this, but do you think that there's particular groups that are being impacted by some of these scams more than others?
Probably, yeah. But so I think if you don't fully understand the capacity, the capabilities of what AI can do, and the real danger there is that it's always evolving, right? The 2 years ago you wouldn't say, oh, if you get a call from your kids, it's probably a call from your kids. Now, it might not be if they have if they're able to get a voice clone from your kid someplace. So those types of threats, sort of understanding where they're at, make you better prepared. And conversely, if you're not aware of them, you become more of a target or become more at risk of falling victim.
So I want to maybe switch gears to thinking about like our data. So Michelle, being that you work very closely with products, I imagine most people have no idea how much data is collected on them on a day-to-day basis, right? Like, can you give us an honest version or insight into what does real data profile on individuals, on the average American, even look like right now?
Yeah, so I would break it out into kind of 3 categories of data. One is what we like to call activity data. And this is about, these are more like telemetry about what you're doing. What site did you sign into? What site did you visit? Your activities while you're online. The second one, which I think people are more concerned about, is what we call content data. So these are things that you create, like your email, or if you're a social media person, like the content you put out there. So these are things that, your words, things that you create. That's content. That's a lot of stuff that people are concerned about. And then we have what I consider like high sensitivity data. So this is like your biometrics. This is your health data. These are things that that are deeply personal and could actually kind of bring harm to your life if the wrong people had information too. And they're often protected by laws like HIPAA. And so all of those types of data that I just mentioned can be in a data profile for you, right? Even a simple app like Fitbit. I go with Fitbit because that can collect health data, right? And so you have all this activity, and not just activity about like actual steps I took and things like that. How many apps did you connect to your Fitbit? Did you connect a fitness pal there, and are you using that for nutrition tracking, and are you using that? And then you have and then some of these like look at your heart rate, how you sleep, right? And so then you have that information, and then sometimes these apps will ask you questions like, what was your mood this day? So then you have the content information. So in a profile, you could have all of that for just one simple Fitbit app. Now imagine if you are using a suite of apps together, like a Google or an Apple ecosystem. You can have that congregation of information that I talked about just in Fitbit across multiple apps in the ecosystem in your data profile. And that's when you start to hear people say, like, you know, Google knows me better than than my cousin, or Chat is my best friend, you know. Right. I have friends that tell me, they're like, Chat is your friend. I was like, can Chat pray for you? Right.
So we have like two camps of folks, right? We have those who are very conscious of their data and how much is being shared, and then we have, you know, some of the newer generations who's like, okay, all of my data is already out there. For that latter camp, like, what are they missing?
I think people in general, they focus more on like, what is my exposure risk if somebody has access to my data, and they think more from like a criminal exposure risk, right? They're like, I'm not doing anything illegal, and you know, I'm not doing anything wrong, so I don't care if everybody has my information. But I think those take into a couple of really bad assumptions. One, you're assuming that the government will always be fair and just, and that the laws will always be in your favor, right? And so, like, if an abortion law comes up and says, like, it's illegal to leave our state to get an abortion, and you have information about wanting to go somewhere and get an abortion outside of your state, right? That puts you in jeopardy, right? So, like, that's one assumption. Another assumption is that the company will always have access and control of your data. But we know there are hackers out there. We know there are bad actors out there, right? There are insiders, like people who quit. I don't know if you guys remember a while back, somebody quit at Twitter and they shut down Trump's Twitter account on their way out, right? So like somebody could, you know, get upset and take your information on their way out, right? And so there's an assumption that that you're fully protected by the company, but there are bad actors that can get access to your information and you know, have something to, like, I remember I lost my wallet once, and my social security card was in there, and someone filed my tax return for me on my behalf the next year, right? Now, and that's just like a physical access. Imagine getting access to all of my Google photos, where I could have took a picture of my health card, I could have took a picture of my credit card once, or I could have took all this, and you had access to all of that information as a bad actor, what you could do with that. And so I do think it's important for people to understand that yes, you being a great person, you may not have anything to hide, but you may want to keep yourself protected from an ecosystem that might not be thinking in your favor.
Exactly, and I think that's what we always want to come back to, right? How do we reduce our risk? How do we reduce that threat, the exposure to those threats?
Yeah.
So since you mentioned hackers, I want to turn to Christina, right? I know we have both seen what happens after a breach, right? Can you give us insight into, let's say, walk us through a chain. Once that data gets out, a data broker gets access to it. What does that look like?
And I have my cheat sheet because I thought about this question the last week, and I was like, I want to give them the best information possible. So I wrote it down, and I am going to let you know what it is, right? So everything that you just said, 100% correct. I think the problem is that we don't look at data like a puzzle. Think about data like a puzzle that you put together with your kids. One piece of the puzzle may not impact you, may or may not, right? Somebody filed your taxes, thank you, but no thank you. But when you put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, there's a picture, there's a story about you. Now I have more information. I know your address. I know your date of birth. I know what you like. I know what Netflix movies you watch. I know what you are more likely to purchase and less likely to purchase, right? And using that information, I can target you, right? So now to my cheat sheet, because I want to give you guys the best information possible. What happens? You sign up for these lists, right? And I'm going to share my cheat sheet. I will send you a copy of it if you want it. But basically, this is what happens. You sign up for a list, you download an app, you download a coupon. Now that company has your name, has your information, has your details, right? Your email address, whatever, your location information. Now there are companies called data brokers, and these are, let's call them legitimate businesses, right? That purchase list of data with all of this information about everyone, every one of us, right? They take this information, they package it, and they sell it. So maybe I'm an advertiser, I'm Nike, and I want to know who in area code 10029 is more likely to buy the new Air Jordans, right? Now I'm going to target ads to that location, to people at that location, right? Or within that location. Now the data gets breached. A hacker gets access to the database. Now they have the information, right? So that means that all of this information can now be misused, right? Someone can take your tax information and take your social security information and steal your identity, right? That means that our data is now even more out there. It's not just this little company that's now selling information. It's now, who knows who has it? It's every place, right? And this also goes to government, right? Governments keep our driver's license information, right? That can also be breached. So that means even more data, even more about you. Now, the targeting is one thing. The problem is when we leverage tools like AI to try to compromise you, right? Now I'm going to set up this email that says, hey Nancy, I know that you just opened a bank account at Chase the other day. I have this great offer. If you send me $500, I will give you $1,500 in credits, and you can, an Amazon, whatever. You think that this is legitimate or legitimately from Chase, because who else knows that information except for you and maybe your husband or your partner, but it's really an attacker, right? So they're tricking you. So because your data is exposed, someone's going to use your data to get things out of you, right? And then that can impact you, right? That can impact your life, that can impact your livelihood, that can impact your bank account, that can impact your tax refund or how much taxes you have to pay back. It impacts your day-to-day life. It can impact your credit. So all not good. So again, if you're looking at this as like one piece of a puzzle and I have nothing to hide, okay, but what happens when you have the entire puzzle complete based on your profile, right? So I think, our data is going to be out there whether we like it or not, but I think one of the things that we can do, not to just, scare everyone off, is just be more mindful of what you're sharing, who you're sharing it with, and how much you're sharing, right? Your Fitbit does not need your date of birth. You can, okay, I tell my kids not to lie, but you can lie in this case, right? You don't have to put the year you were born, right? Like, make yourself a little bit younger, I don't know. And you don't really need to give up that much information. Think when you're being asked for this information, think, why do they need this? Mm-hmm. Why do they need to know my weight, right? I'm going to give myself 10 pounds less, right? Because sometimes we still need these resources, but the problem is that there is no one on the other side protecting our data, unfortunately. And our data is currency these days, so. Yeah.
Can I jump in on this question too, Q? Just because I think like a lot of times people say like AI makes it faster, and people are like, how does AI make it faster? Mm-hmm. So like in a situation where somebody can steal that much data, in the past, what someone had to do was kind of take estimated, educated guesses to figure out what's the data that's most important for me to get to, right? And with all that data, it's hard for them to figure that out and to process that to come up with a scam for you. With the rise of large language models, like the power of them is that they can take so much data and synthesize the most important thing that you're looking for really quick. And you can just prompt it and ask it. And so something that may have taken you 2 or 3 days, which by that time a hacker and a scammer is like, I'm spending too much time on this, I don't care, I'm gonna move on, can now take them 2 or 3 minutes, right? And so that's what makes AI, accelerate the rate at which someone can compromise someone else.
Exactly, it's an excellent point because AI makes things more accessible. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the analysis that AI can do on that data, and essentially it also being able to come up with the ways in which it can compromise its target. So essentially what we used to say before AI is something as a service. So if anybody has heard of like ransomware and how that has wreaked havoc in many organizations and people, once they started to make that as a tool, then they offered it as a service, and now you don't necessarily need to have the skill set, you just need to be able to leverage it, to utilize it, and that is exactly what AI is doing, so the threats are just plentiful. And Strat, anything to add on this before we go from a city perspective?
No, I think they were covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe let's get a little bit more practical. Christine, I want to turn it back to you. If someone here has the weekend, right, to focus on ways in which they can improve their security around this type of challenge, what do you suggest they do?
Okay, well, I already made one suggestion, which is have a code word with your family members, right? Think of one code word, memorize it, practice it, just not in public. Another thing is that I think sometimes a little goes a long way. Please make sure that your phones have a PIN. I know it's a pain sometimes, and you may not want it because it's easier to just swipe up and be there, but make sure that you at least are using Face ID. And I think just to add a third one is a lot of people still don't do this because I see family members that don't do this. Whenever you set up a new account, if you must, make sure that you have a multi-factor authentication set up on the account. I know it's a pain, but think of it as saving one of those pieces of that puzzle that I spoke about. And if at all possible, do not have it text your phone, right? I know it's better than nothing, if you receive that little 5-digit PIN on your phone and then enter it. But the safer approach is to have what we call like a multi-factor authentication application. And Google offers one, Microsoft offers one as well. And you can, it backs up for you and everything like that, but you can store all of those codes in there for you. So whenever you need to log into an application, you could just go to your app, get the code, paste it in, and you're good. It's an extra step, but it's an extra step that can save you at the end of the day. So that's what you can do this weekend. It'll take you 15 minutes.
And I think I just want to name what Christina just mentioned with that example. An extra step causes you a little bit more friction, but also the attacker on the other side, right? So going back to Michelle's example, we essentially hackers want to go the path of least resistance, right? So if you have a little bit more friction in your process, which is not going to create too much time, it creates a lot of friction in their process, and they're typically going to go off to the next thing, which is an easier path. Michelle, so from a product side, anything that folks could think about, perhaps in Google products on their phone, things that could be enabled, that are enabled, ways in which it could help improve their security?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from any product that you have, one of the things that people don't do is they don't change the defaults of their product. They don't look at the privacy and security settings to see, like, does it really align with what I want? And at Google, we know this, so we've created things like privacy checkup and security checkup to kind of walk you through it so that you don't have to look at every single setting. But I do think, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to read a privacy policy. They're too long, and you're not going to understand all the legal jargon. But I do, encourage you to look at your default settings, and don't just assume that the default settings are the ones that make the most sense. And sometimes they won't make the most sense from a privacy and security perspective, because they really try to optimize for your experience so that you don't have to do too many things. You don't get asked for consent too much. But sometimes you want that consent there, and you do want them to ask. And so I encourage everybody to go to your settings, and the privacy and security settings is typically its own setting. So you can just look for the privacy and security setting and just take 5 minutes to go through it and just say oh, that's shared with everyone by default? No. I thought that would just be friends only. Right? It just take a look and make sure that you're comfortable with where it is.
Even on your phone and on your computer as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like your phone settings.
Yep.
Absolutely. Strat?
So definitely agree on all of that. The other thing, I like to think maybe a little more about the network layer of these things. So Google offers and Cloudflare offers something called like secure DNS, and they'll not only secure the communication between your phone or your laptop or whatever to the DNS provider, which is how you translate the name of a website into the actual IP address, the address of, but also will filter out for, in some cases, if you're using the right one, it will filter out for known malicious websites. So the city offers this an app called Secure NYC, and it will do some of these things. It'll enable the secure DNS, and it'll look at Wi-Fi settings and stuff like that. But that would be one of the things that I'd say you can do today and get you some level of privacy. There's also some controls around parental controls. You should, if you are not a child, you should even still look at the parental controls because they provide a lot of these filters and controls around malware being added and whatnot to your phone.
I have beef with Apple's parental controls, honestly. Like, I love Apple, but
right.
My kids get around them.
Yeah,
And my kids are not little mini hackers.
Yeah, it's not intended to, I'm saying like you can definitely get around it. That's not the issue. But if you are actively enabling some of these defenses, I think they go a long way of.
You're right.
So, you know,
Except if you have mini hackers.
Exactly. You know, even as mini hackers.
Raising the friction bar.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the you know, there's an old joke about you know, two people are in a forest and they hear a bear coming, and the one person says, "We gotta run," and the other guy leans down and is like tying his shoes. He's like, "What are you doing? We gotta go. It's like you're never gonna outrun a bear. He's like, "I don't gotta outrun a bear. I gotta outrun you."
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
raise the bar so that you're not the one getting attacked.
But just because you mentioned Secure NYC, and obviously we have New Yorkers in the building, are there other tools and technologies, mechanisms that New Yorkers can rely on that the city offers that they may not be aware of?
So there are a number of services that are offered through the city. You know, depending on what you're looking for, first off, there's a number of controls that the city implements around the data that we collect, city policies, state policies, and such. But I'd encourage folk to go to the website and see all kind of the myriad of things that are offered up through the site.
Okay. Yeah. I remember from my time with the city, like even when you attend places like this, that you naturally feel are safe, you know, like just incorporating secure DNS and secure Wi-Fi into buildings that you assume should be trustworthy. The city does its job to ensure that they are. And then lastly, before we turn it to Q&A, because we talked about parental controls, I imagine there's parents in the room, there's parents on the panel. What should we be thinking about, regardless to whether our kids are bypassing the controls or not? But like, what advice would you give the audience around preparing your kids or their students for this threat and properly utilizing the benefits of AI, but also making sure that they are not victims to the AI-related risk?
Want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. From a non-AI perspective, I talk a lot with my kids about sharing credentials because the kids are doing it. They're like, "Oh, let me get your Peacock account so I can watch this," or, you know, "Give me your Robux password and I'll give you this," and I harp on them about like sharing credentials. It's not a good way to go, even with friends, even with people you trust. You got to get in the habit of not doing that. Like, that's a big no-no. So that's one thing I've talked to my kids about. And unfortunately, sometimes they haven't listened and they've lost all their Robux. And then they're like, "Mom, you gonna get that back?" No, I'm not. Hope you learned your lesson. So I told you not to do that. So that's one thing that I talk to my kids about. When it relates to AI, I think one of the things that's important is to tell them, like, AI is not a person. Especially with these large language models, it's starting to feel more more personal. And so when you think about people, you make assumptions about people. You make assumptions about morality. You make assumptions about value systems and things like that. And I'm like, you will get out of AI whatever you tell it. Like, you can tell it to be encouraging. You can tell it to be critical, right? Because it is a machine, right? And I think it's important for them to understand that. And then and that's from like a safety perspective, because you may be assuming safeguards that are not there because you're dealing with a machine and not with a human. And I think that applies a lot to like large language models and LLMs. I'm a privacy nut, so I'm always telling them, like, be careful what you talk about on the internet, like, and the pictures that you take. Like, if you're taking a picture outside of a house, don't have the house number
Exactly.
in the picture. Like, why did you just tell somebody the name of your school? Like, they now know where you live, right? There's so many things they can assume. Like, if you're, talking to, friends that you meet online in these games, I was like, you always start with the lowest amount of information, which means you don't even get my name.
Absolutely.
You get like, an avatar or something like that. So those are key things that I, educate my kids around, so that they can have the principles of safety, because things are happening every day that I can't account for, and I don't want to overwhelm them. So I just want them to understand the principles, like keep your credentials private. Don't assume AI is like a human and has values. It's a machine, right? Those kind of things. Tell people the least amount of information until they get to a place of trust where you can tell them more. Like, be progressive. And so I hope that by them having those principles, when other situations come that I haven't explicitly accounted for, they'll remember the principles.
Exactly. I love that. Like, being principle first, having the mental models to be able to navigate any situation, and be a critical thinker. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want from our kids. And they're going to be part of systems, right, for which they can't initially change, but they need to know how to operate within them. And I think, even our school systems, the school says, you're getting on the bus and here's your tag, and they want you to put it on your backpack. I'm like, absolutely not. They take a peek at that. They know your name, your address, everything. And you take it out when you get in the bus. You put it back in your bag when you're done, right? So it's just having those ways in which to navigate the problem. Christina?
So I've been working with my kids since they were younger, with things like, when we're going to Disney World, don't tell our neighbors that we're going to Disney World, right? Don't say you're going on vacation, when you're going on vacation, that we're not going to be home. And I actually show them examples of things that are happening. So sometimes that is a news, sometimes that is a video. I think for me, I'm really big on education and sharing the good and the bad and the ugly sometimes, because I think things don't always land when you speak in hypothetical, right? Or hypothetical examples. I show them, look what happened to her, or look what happened to them, right? With things like, talking to strangers on Roblox, or sharing information, or sharing your phone number, or meeting a stranger. So I've been very big on the whole zero trust, not only from like a work perspective, but at home. And now with AI, I talk about, at least with my 15-year-old, we've been having a lot of discussions about AI hallucinates, right? Because sometimes she's like, oh, let me see your ChatGPT for a second. I want to ask a question. And I'm like, you still need to validate, because it doesn't mean that it's correct, right? So I think it goes back to the critical thinking point that you made. It's about kind of like being hyper vigilant, and they're going to make mistakes. We learn from those mistakes, but I still show them examples. Like, if I see like, bad things, right? Like a little girl was murdered because she met blah blah blah. I'm like, here you go. And let's talk about it, right? Because I don't want to like shield them so much that they don't understand that the real world is ugly and can be ugly, right? So there was a movie that talked about, like, you take the crooked with the straights, and I always use that. Like, the good, yes, it's fantastic. It can help boost our productivity, but there's also the bad, and this is how it's being leveraged. So they understand like that cyber and that security mentality, and I try to get them to apply it in different scenarios, even with friends and trusting. Like, it may not be good or bad, but I'm very big on no trusting, because you don't have enough information, and unfortunately, I say you can trust us in this household. Outside of this household, the story changes. So we have those very deep conversations, and when they bring back stories from school situations or friends, I see their ability to think critically about was this person asking me that. So it's working, and so I will continue to scare the big Jesus out of them because sometimes fear works. You know what I mean? But it's more about education. Yeah.
So in cybersecurity, we call what Christina is doing FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yeah.
But I
don't
like
want to do that, but
Right.
it works for kids.
But I like the way in which you're reframing it. It's show them, maybe introduce fear,
Yeah.
but also introduce ways in which you can counterbalance,
Yes.
right? Because that's life.
Yep.
Light and dark, black, white,
Yep.
like that is what we are always going to contend with. There is no life without it. So there's always going to be contrast.
Yeah.
Strat, anything
Thanks.
to
Yeah.
add?
I just want to sort of continue with what Michelle was saying around the fact that AI is just a giant computer or a series of computers, and that's really important to remember. And again, sort of the good and bad of it is all of the things you're typing into it, everything you've ever put online publicly is being just gobbled up into these AIs. So that makes it a very useful tool, but also just remember, anytime you're talking to it, it's using that as part of its training and information and all that. And yeah, just to sort of keep that in mind when you're thinking about these things. And there may be other models you can use. Try to do private offline stuff. It's more complicated, but that kind of thing is, I think, sort of keep that in mind when you're doing that.
And I think we can't forget about the real world element as well, right? There are a lot of things that are happening around us. And I think because a lot of us, or most people, are like this all day, we forget about the vulnerabilities around us every day. And that's also important to be hyper vigilant online, but also don't forget about the real life in person things that you have to be aware of, because I think we sometimes forget about that.
Absolutely. And I would say, to wrap up, because I'm a parent as well, auditability and visibility are like, we call that observability in
Yes.
cybersecurity, right? My son is 16, but I still monitor, right? Like, he has the freedom to do what he does, but I still have visibility into certain behaviors and activity, right? So one of his buddies asked him to send him some money one day because he had got into a situation that he shouldn't have been in. And he said, I can't because my mom's going to see the transaction. And he's like, send it for what? He was like, oh, no, you got yourself into a pickle. Like, my mom's going to see the transaction. She's going to ask me, why did you send money there? So thank you to the panelists. We want to open it up for questions. So I'll hand it off to Brandy.
Okay, we've got quite a few questions. So the first one is, what can go wrong if someone has access to my fitness or nutrition data?
Ooh. Yeah, that's a really good one. So, one of the things that can go wrong is like people can start to target you with things that may seem right because they may notice like, oh, this person's heart is like, let's say tachycardiac or something like that. So they may because people are trying to sell medicines all the time, right? They may start to target you with that kind of information, and for you may start to question like, am I doing the right thing for my health? And one of the things that I think people will target you with right now, because it's all the craze, is like herbs, natural things, and like some of those things don't work well with your medication. For example, I take blood pressure medication, and grapefruit lowers your blood pressure significantly. And so I might start getting targeted with things that say like, you just need to eat more grapefruits. Well, grapefruits actually interact really bad with my blood pressure medication, and I could get really sick if I do that, right? And so you have to be able, you have to think about not so much that somebody can compromise me, but like you can get targeted with information that convinces you to do something that you can then harm yourself by, even inadvertently.
I think it could also impact you from an insurance perspective and life insurance perspective and coverage. Remember, we don't know who's getting this data, so you can apply for life insurance or something like that for your family. They could have access to this information and say, oh, you have a heart issue, we're not going to cover you, right? They could see your weight and your height and your age and your smoking or non-smoking and your purchasing patterns, and that can all be used against you as well.
That makes me think of whether it can be used in court, like you say on your application for something that, oh, I'm not a smoker, and then somehow in some other app you said you were, and now they're using it in court. So, interesting. Okay, so the next question is, how can someone steal my voice or my child's voice, and what can I do to safeguard that?
Anything that's posted online, basically. So just be aware of that, and like the top line.
We're always at risk whenever we're being recorded, if you're on a podcast, even a phone call. I think it's, again, education and just being mindful of it. I mean, our kids are gaming, right? They have headsets and microphones and they're gaming. Their voice can be mirrored and stolen. Someone can be, it's just as simple as having your voice recorded and then just feeding that into like a tool, an AI tool, and cloning it. It's very simple, so
Right,
code
so you
works.
won't be able to stop it.
Right.
But you can be mindful
Yep.
and determine how you respond when it's used against you.
Okay. Can someone, this is just me asking now, but can someone maybe copyright their voice in some way or do something like that to prevent it?
That's interesting. Are there any lawyers in the room? I don't believe so. I don't think there's a precedent yet.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of discussion around that within the entertainment industry
Yes.
because of AI. So I think that's an evolving situation with more things than voice, but some people have distinct voices, right? So to be continued.
To be continued. Okay, so I think you answered this. If I post something on social media, can someone just take the video or photo and use it themselves? And the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
Someone asked, are some browsers safer? And
Oh,
Are
good
they?
question.
That's a great question. I don't want to seem like I'm endorsing any browser here. I will just say like a browser created by a company that is under regulatory control will probably be a safer browser just because they have to meet certain compliance standards and security standards than maybe like a open source browser where all the people in the world can contribute to the source code and there's no regulation there. So that's one thing, but like the safest browser is the browser that you control and you go in there and look at the settings and make sure that the settings reflect your own personal values around that. So that goes back to my point of like the things that I wish people would do is like I wish people would just take 5 minutes and look at the default settings of their browsers and make sure that they're okay with it. There is like features in certain browsers that they have like incognito mode or private mode. A lot of that is more around how much people can track your activity. So there's this thing called cookies. I don't know how many people know about cookies, but you'll see when you go to a different website, they'll say like, do you want to accept cookies? Do you want these cookies? Cookies is little information about you. We call it metadata that kind of travels so that when you open up another site, it can access that information about you. So let's say there's a Facebook cookie that says you like ice cream. We'll go something simple, right? That information about you can be used on any website that accepts Facebook cookies. And so all those websites you go to will say like, oh, you like ice cream because I subscribe to that Facebook cookie and I can have that information about you. And so these browsers that have that kind of incognito mode or private mode, what their goal is to kind of make sure that all the websites you go to can't access those cookies and access that data. And they have to treat you like a fresh new person and get to know you at that time. And then you get to control what you tell it.
so
Now
are you
that-
saying reject the cookies?
I'm saying, rejecting cookies is a great idea if you want like all of your experiences to like be controlled by the information you want to provide it versus information you may not be sure is in the cookie to provide it. Okay. Yeah, but there are one thing about rejecting cookies is if you do that, you have to provide the information again, right? So
Friction.
it's like you're trading the experience and the convenience for the privacy and safety, and I think like that's a personal decision, what you're gonna do with that. Yeah.
Getting the practice of cleaning your browser data.
Yes. your
But I-
cache, yeah.
Yeah, I also want to just like add on that, like the privacy mode and the incognito mode are great and good, and it'll clear all the cookies when that browser tab closes. But if you log into something like a
Yes.
Facebook or anything like that, those actions aren't stored in your browser. Now they're stored up at the server, so Facebook's still going to know it's you, and anything that you're doing in that context is not private to the company or website you're logging into. So just keep that in mind for sure.
Now, just to make it a little bit nefarious for a second, so people can correlate why you would do something and why you want to take maybe a more proactive measure, is from a threat actor perspective. Threat actors can access your cookies if they're able to infiltrate that browser session. And for stateful cookies that remain after you've gone, they can act as you, right? So they can continue your session acting as if they are you, and maybe that's, let's say, to an important or sensitive site, and then that obviously raises the risk level.
Okay, so the next question, I think these two can kind of go together. It was about how can I better protect my data in the cloud, but also is my iCloud or Google Drive Google Drive and Photos safe?
Wow.
You could answer from a product perspective, whether Google or other platform.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of want to use some of the similar things. Like, your data is going to be as safe as some of the decisions you take and some of the values of the company that you choose, right? So a company that's heavily regulated, like banks, they are highly incentivized to keep your data very safe, right? And because people won't store money with them if they don't feel like it's safe, and then they can't be a bank, right? They can't invest, they can't make money, right? Google is a company where private personal data is how it helps you enjoy your life and be more productive. And so Google is highly incentivized to ensure that your data remains private and is safe. And so I would say any company that is regulated and highly incentivized to do that is going to, keep your data safer than one that is not. But then, like, if you go and make your data public in your Google Drive, right, you can't say, like, oh, Google didn't protect my data. Well, you literally changed your settings to make it a public document because you wanted to share it with your friend and you didn't want them to have to log in to see it, right? You wanted to make it easier for them. Well, you just kind of created a situation that's keeping you from being safe. So, like, there is a joint accountability in my perspective when it comes to, like, whether your data is going to be safe. I like to use companies that are incentivized to keep my data safe. Like, their business model relies on me keeping their data safe. And there's regulatory pressure because that gives me a recourse if they don't keep my data safe. And then I like to, acknowledge my own responsibility in that measure. And I think it's also important that the company gives me control, like, and gives me the ability. And if I'm using a company and I don't see the settings I expect to see, like if I go to a company where I can put my own content in it and they don't give me any settings that say who I can share my content with, and they determine who I share my content with, and I'm like, hey, we're not aligned. We don't have the goals here, and I don't know why you're not incentivized to give me the things that allows me to protect things myself and allows me to do my accountability, but I'm not going to use your company.
Yeah.
I was going to say that I love you. You're great. Yeah. Fantastic. And I want to agree, but I disagree because, as you can see, if you see on the news, everybody says that we protect your data, we take your data security seriously, and then their data, it's hacked, right? Mm-hmm. And our data is all over the place. And these are companies that are incentivized to keep our data safe, and these are companies that are regulated, right? And yet there's still something that happens behind the scenes. So your data is as safe as their security programs, right? People like myself and Q, if they don't want to pay us any money, we may not want to take that job to protect everybody's thing. But seriously, like, sometimes, we are limited in what we can do, and sometimes it's because the companies maybe don't value it as much, right? And they're okay with paying the fine, right? Even though they're regulated, right? Sometimes the fine is a little bit easier to pay than to deal with all that other stuff and putting the money. So I would say no, for the most part, and it doesn't matter if it's joint accountability, it's no. So you just have to always be mindful that your data is never 100% safe, and there is no such thing as 100% secure either. So you have to be mindful of what you're sharing. I would say don't upload sensitive pictures to Google or to iCloud. Another thing is that these companies, they also train on our data, including our pictures. There's something called privacy preserving technology, where they can actually look at the metadata attached to our pictures from iCloud without downloading it, and that's okay for them to do.
Yep.
So don't post sensitive pictures or text crazy sensitive pictures, and WhatsApp is not safe. So just be mindful of that when you are sharing things on the internet or digitally.
I would just want to add, there are tools that you can upload encryption or encrypted files, but if you can avoid putting it online, it's probably for the better.
Right. I think
Probably
some of the
But-
controversy
yeah.
that people would hear right now, you saying WhatsApp isn't safe, when part of WhatsApp's thing is that your text messages are encrypted, so nobody will be able to know it, see it, or whatever. And
WhatsApp is owned by Facebook.
okay.
So,
But you're looking
keep
at like
that in mind.
end-to-end encryption
Yeah.
protocols that improve the situation. Again, it goes to the controls. If you lose control of your account, then you lose control of all the information you've put up there. If you have different layers of defense, if you're able to upload to your Google Drive, if it's particularly sensitive, you can encrypt it before you put it up there, so that even if you do lose control of your account, then the data still has a second layer of defense. So
But realistically, like a lot of people don't.
I know,
encrypt
it's-
the- I mean,
exactly,
it's
it's-
it's difficult to.
there's a technology race that
Right,
you're trying to.
right,
I
exactly.
think one of the difficult questions, which is why I kind of made a face when he said, like, is it safe? Because that's like a yes or no, right? Is it safe? Yes. Is it safe? No.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's there's no yes or no when it comes to safe. Like, they're safer, they're
Safer.
safest, and that is always changing to try to figure out what can be more safe and what can be safest. But there is no 100% it is safe.
And
Well, I think
safer
we have to determine-
practices,
Yeah.
right?
what
Safer
is the
practices.
definition of safe, right?
Right.
And the way in which I look at this is reducing risk,
Mm-hmm.
right? What are the ways in which you can reduce risk? And like, reduce the risk as much as possible, learn the controls to reduce the risk, and be mindful. Because there's that just outside of technology, we go outside, what's safe? We can reduce our risk posture, but what's completely safe?
You gotta know how to fight.
Stay ready.
Yeah, I mean, well, that was one of the next questions was when a company, and I'm just thinking about, you mentioned the banks, and I'm like, there's so many banks that are like, oh, your data, and it's always getting breached, but someone asks, you know, what can I do to protect myself, and can I sue them?
Yes, the answer is yes, you can. How much you're gonna get is a whole different, question. How long it's gonna take you is another. There's many organizations, many law firms who are taking it upon themselves to kind of go after these institutions who are not protecting your data. And obviously, the biggest thing is the people's vote, right? Like, if organizations are not protecting your data, stop using them, right? Like, we do have the power, but at the same time, there is that joint accountability, and I do believe in that, even though incentives drive behavior.
Yeah.
Right.
You just have to be careful with what you sign, because when you agree to, when you're signing up and it says, please click this little checkbox to agree to our terms and conditions. Well, those terms and conditions can be legally binding.
Right.
And so if
Yeah.
sometimes it's all in legalese and it makes no sense, just put it into ChatGPT and tell it to give it to you in English. And a lot of times if you read, it'll say things like, we own your data in perpetuity, or you're giving us the right to do this or do that. So sometimes you really can't sue. You could try, but sometimes you're actually signing off to say, like, yeah, if you guys get breached,
Right.
I'm not gonna sue you. So you gotta be careful.
Yeah, and just sort of also bringing it back to some of the AI conversations, there are like more privacy preserving models, again, offline models where you're running it. It's a lot more work, but if you put in the effort, it could be there. And there are some services that try to be anonymous and aren't trying to like train off of the data. So again, those are services out there that could help from a from a safety perspective, if you.
Do you guys know what he means when he says offline models? So the idea is like when a company makes a model, they use data, they store that data on their servers, and they build the model. You can have like an offline model where they when you're asking it a question, it takes that information that they own and then it combines it with information specifically about you that's not in their server. So it could be information on your phone, right? But that information is only ever combined on your phone. And so they never really get access to it. It's always just on what we call like offline, like out of their server and kind of more under your control.
This one is for the city guy. Does the city track our biometrics? And if so, how often is someone wrongfully accused of something because of it?
I would be unable to answer that question even if I had more details on it. But all of that, I know that they try to be very sensitive to it. Again, I can't speak for the city. There's a lot of good people trying to do good work out there. I know that they don't always get it right, and like I said.
I think with a topic like that, right, you have to almost like decompose the problem.
Yeah.
Like who actually is having access and tracking the biometric data? Who is pulling the biometric data? And it's usually a third party, right? Like New York City itself is most likely not developing the technology to, do some type of biometric reading. So now you have a supply chain risk, which is everywhere. But the city does have a strong threat management program, a strong third-party risk management program, and we tend to, or at least the time in which I was there, tend to work with those third parties to assess their policies or procedures, ways in which they monitor that activity.
You know when they say everything can and will be used against you? Everything can and will be used against you. So
Not just in the court of
just
law.
take that into consideration.
Right. And I think even in this
Yeah.
example, it's like, because they're saying wrongfully accused, right? So it's like, okay, and I'm thinking of Dr. Joy Bulamwini's documentary, and when someone who you were walking out of your building and they thought it was you because of your biometric data, but it wasn't you, and now you're being convicted of something, that kind of gives me what this feels like in that question, right? But what I will say is,
You just answered the question, right?
yeah, what I will say is that we are going to, in September, be doing a session with the city that we're really excited about, and they're going to come and talk about the ways in which they're using AI, and so excited for that. The next question was, how do you identify deepfakes now, because they've gotten so good?
So I've been testing different technologies for clients. There are different technologies that, let's say, if you're in a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, you can add the bot, if you will, to the meeting to determine whether it's a deep fake. And it just monitors language, tone, movement. It monitors a bunch of markers to determine whether there is some type of deep fake or impersonation.
This next one, if bad actors can use AI to sift our data more quickly, is there a way that we as users can use AI to more effectively protect our data?
Oh yeah, that's a really great question.
Yeah, I think we've all sort of touched on it, is that it's really increasing the velocity of both the attacks and the defenses. So, ultimately, security has always been a cat and mouse game, and this is just another evolution of the game.
This individual that posted that question should take that entire question and post it into an LLM tool
Yes.
and ask it
Yes.
to see the results,
Yeah.
because I'm sure that, again, you have to validate and verify, but I think it'll come up with some interesting responses there.
So I also think it depends on where you're sitting to answer that question, right? Like, so if you're within an organization, monitoring, protecting an organization, like many of us are, then yes, there's many ways in which you could use AI to essentially make your workflows more efficient and effective, right? So you have to look at, in that workflow, where do you have the most friction? Like if you look at a threat activity, let's say a hacker breached my organization last week. If I analyze that whole workflow, I can see where are the ways in which I could have identified this nefarious activity sooner? And perhaps I could leverage AI to help me kind of compress the timeline in which I could detect that activity, reducing the risk to the organization. So depending on where you sit in that chain, whether it's individual, whether it's organization, you have to answer that question differently.
And the other thing I want to add from like a kind of personal consumer perspective, and I think this is what you were getting at, like ask AI. Like there's a lot of settings out there, and that could be overwhelming. And so just like other people can use AI to sift through your data, you could use AI to sift through the privacy and security settings of different applications, right? And you can ask, your favorite large language model, say like, hey, I use Instagram, Facebook, and I know that's all under the Meta umbrella. If I'm this type of person, I like this type of privacy, what settings would you, what should I change on those apps to reflect that?
Right.
Walk me through it. And then that can, help you instead of, going to the settings and reading and trying to figure out where it needs to be. It can give you some direction as to like what your settings should be.
Right, I like that. I have a hard time remembering so many passwords. What's the safest way to keep my password secure so I can access it?
Password manager.
Christina? I only call on Christina just because she's dealt with a lot of identity security, so we'll love her response here.
No, yeah, I mean, I agree, 100% password managers. I have multiple password managers because there's no way to remember like thousands of passwords. And also, it's difficult to come up with like unique passwords every time. And that's one thing. I'm sorry. Please do not reuse the same password. I know it's easier, but if it's easy for you, it's easy for the attackers, right? Try to have unique passwords, and a password manager will help you do that automatically, right? You don't have to remember it. You don't have to try to create these confusing passwords and then forget and then have to reset your password again. And it's kind of like a secure locker where you have to remember one password, the password to get into the locker, to unlock all of your other passwords. So a password manager, there are multiple out there. I would say, do a little bit of research because there are also a lot of fake ones, right? So you may have heard of a few. They're 1Password, there's like Bitwarden. There are a couple. You actually have to take a look at the pros and cons and just remember that when something is free, that means that you are the product. So don't be afraid to pay something for.
I'm surprised none of you said passwordless.
Yeah, I mean, passwordless is big, but I think passwordless for me is more like enterprise thinking.
Okay.
That's
Fair.
that's
You have little control of being able to do that.
Yeah.
And for those tools, they're all going back to earlier multi-factor authentication for the master password on those
Yeah.
on the password manager.
Yep.
So the
Very
industry is moving to the direction of passwordless, right? Removing passwords because passwords are the entryway into everything, right? And there's a term in the industry which I don't love is like users are the weakest link. I don't necessarily love that, but at the same time, if you look at most of the attacks today, hackers or attackers are not breaking in; they're logging in with the passwords that the data brokers are storing, and they're accessible everywhere. That is the least path of resistance. So whenever you can increase the friction with respect to the passwords, going passwordless or adding multi-factor, then that's the direction we want to go in.
Okay.
Also say use password phrases. My whole family uses password phrases, and if you just come up with that mental model for how to create passwords for the type of system that you're logging into, it makes it much more seamless to remember.
When the threat were viruses, virus protection software helped. Is there AI protection software?
That's a great question.
I'm not aware.
for like consumers.
Yeah.
So
I mean, a lot of tools have like AI protections built in. I know on the enterprise side, so businesses, we leverage different systems and tools that also incorporate AI technology. But I don't know of anything, there isn't like a one-stop shop,
Okay.
right, for consumer.
I think maybe if the person was in person, I would ask like, what is the goal?
Right.
Like, what are they trying to get to? Oh, perfect. What do you mean by that?
There were things like Norton and whatever.
Right.
Are there things that people do that increase your chances of catching, name it, someone, AI intrusions of a variety. It's not going to do everything, obviously.
Mhm.
But as you're talking, I'm thinking, oh my God, my bank, several of my financial institutions verify my voice.
Mhm.
Never worried. I mean, I know about voice. You know, it's just like bots on your Zoom. I mean, are there any companies that are sort of trying to create a net to catch a variety of these
I totally understand that.
Kind of like an antivirus, but for the new world.
The reason why I say it's different though is antivirus was to protect you from any types of threats coming in, right? If it could identify it based on some type of signature, so you had to know what you were stopping to be able to stop it. AI operates a little bit differently. It's also intertwined or integrated into everything. Right, so it's not a thing that is targeting you or attempting to attack you. It's just part of an already existing workflow, which it is now enabling to be faster. So I think on the opposite end is up to all of those businesses, those organizations that are developing the applications, the systems, et cetera, to also incorporate the AI to be able to detect it. So like your bank. So you just mentioned bots, right? So a lot of my clients are experiencing like AI-enabled bots, and how do they stop them from essentially targeting their applications? But it's still an autonomous bot. The AI is just making it smarter, right? So it's now attacking you in ways in which maybe you don't have signature for. So you're having to be a little bit more creative.
I do understand.
Yeah.
It was wishful thinking.
And maybe something for the future.
I think back then also there's another term in the industry, we talk about deterministic versus non-deterministic, and back then with antivirus it was more deterministic, so we knew that A plus B equaled C, right? And we could like account for that and then protect against that or for that. Now AI is non-deterministic, so it's like creating new patterns as it's learning, so that's a little bit more difficult to account for, to protect against, because we're still kind of living in both worlds, right? So
And we are getting there with the behavioral analysis,
we are.
but
It'll take a little bit more time.
And all of the frontier models and all those large companies try to do some stuff internally to prevent malicious use of them. But then there's like different types of prompt injections and to escape around the various controls that are in place. So I think what I'd say is there's probably a good business model somewhere in there if you wanted to do something with your.
Okay, and the last question is, do you think the social and economic benefits of AI outweigh the negative environmental impacts? If not, are we taking these impacts as seriously as we should?
I'll go
I don't know.
backward. I don't think we're taking it as serious as we should, no. I think there's groups of folks who are. The environmental impact, I think, is one that does not get enough attention. I think folks who are in particular communities are fighting the good fight because it's directly impacting them. Those who are far away from it, just like farm to table, right? Like you don't care about what's happening to animal as long as there's chicken in the grocery store, right? So I think we need to kind of be more in touch with the supply chain and how the things that we're consuming are impacting our water, our environment, our mental health, like the ways in which our kids are no longer thinking critically. There's a lot of downside, but hopeful.
Yeah, I would say like unresponsible scaled AI could definitely not be worth the trade-off. Like we need the environment to survive. I agree that we're not taking it serious. I think we're not taking the environment in general serious enough, but definitely if you look towards like where the industry is going with like digital workers and a digital workforce, that's going to take a lot of power. You're going to have to cool those machines. So it's kind of like, all the power that we need now for electricity, we had to find alternatives. We had to find solar power, wind power, and those types of alternatives so we don't destroy our planet. And I think we're not being proactive enough. Like, we have to find another coolant solution for these machines that's not water, like, or that's not going to make us use up all of our water. It's not going to damage our environmental ecosystems. And we know we have to do it. I don't think we're as urgent about it. And so I don't think like unresponsible scaled growth of AI is worth the trade-off. But I do think like if we can be more proactive about what it's going to mean to have data centers all over the place, and that we have to keep them cool, and they're going to need electricity. And if we think about it and we can be proactive about it, then I do think like that it will be worth the benefit that the AI model will give. Because I honestly think like, and I'm a little bit of an AI enthusiast, so I'll put that out there. But I think that AI will open us up to be more creative as a people, and to do like things that get on your nerves that you don't like to do, that's repetitive. You can start to offload that so that you can be more in your creative and innovative space, in strategic space, that I think world is capable of doing. But sometimes we kind of get bogged down with the administrative stuff that we have to get done. And I think that there could be some beauty that comes from that, but not if it grows unresponsibly.
I mean, I think that if it, yes, but I think that if it means that my light bill is going to go up, which is what it has been meaning, then no, send it back, take it back. I don't want it. Right? I mean, I'm being honest, right? Like the effect of, we speak a lot of big words and all that, but the reality is that if there's a data center near our area, that means that the cost is being thrown back to us, right? To the consumer. So, right, exactly. So if my light bill is going to jump from $250 a month to $1,500 a month for you to have singing babies, I don't want it. Like, take it away, shut it down, right? And that's the reality. Even if it makes me more productive, even if it helps me be creative, there's a direct impact. And, unfortunately, employers are not giving us raises at that same rate, right? And so I don't think that the consumer should bear the brunt of this technology innovation or technological innovation. I think that those companies like, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Facebooks, they should pay for it. Let them pay for it, right? I don't want to pay for it. Right?
So you all support data centers in space?
What?
Data centers in space?
I don't think that's necessarily more economically better.
You can do whatever you want in space as long as I don't have to pay for it. No, I'm not paying for it. I'm not paying for it. You know what I mean? And that's the reality. I think, we're not considering the context. A lot of people are struggling, right? Gas is $5. Eggs are like $10 or whatever. Like, we got kids. We got to send our kids to college. We're trying to survive out here. And I think a lot of people are not addressing that fact, right? The environment is super important, but so is my livelihood, right? And I think both go hand in hand, right? I would prefer to have a better, safer, cleaner environment and a lower light bill than to have dancing babies on TikTok that make me laugh, right? I think that's...
I want all three.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, we would want
Utopia.
all of it, right?
Right.
But we don't live in a perfect world, and so there are trade-offs, and that's not a trade-off that I'm willing to support.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
I think the space is the environment as well, and we need to be mindful of space.
Well, we're talking about coolants, right?
But in terms of the environment, that I think that we need to have better solutions in general. The economics are going to drive a lot of these things, and it's not just you're seeing an alignment of environmental considerations and economic considerations that and I'll just say get out and vote if you're going to be concerned about it. Yeah.
One of the things before we go to this one last question that I've seen come up is around, is it AI that is actually the thing that's impacting the data centers and people's electricity going up, or is it all the other things that are happening in the data centers that are actually doing that? And AI is taking the fall for it because it is the new latest thing and now causing people to feel like it's the AI that's the reason for it. Any thoughts on that?
Large language models are expensive. The power, the types of chips you have to use to support them, the amount of data they need to store, to run, it is expensive. It really is like it's a new thing that is causing us to figure out how to handle it. So yes, all corporations haven't been green with their data centers, and they haven't been managing the issues appropriately. But in addition, AI is another thing that is making it hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think all the large companies had green commitments until about 2 years ago, where they all abandoned them, which is, again, everyone's got to run the race, right?
I
So.
wonder what happened 2 years ago.
What's your question?
No, this wasn't a question, but it was sort of a cool attempt. I don't know if they still exist. A data mine, I don't know if it was in Manhattan or Brooklyn, but a data mining group paired up with a place that had saunas, and they tried to use the thermal energy as a resource, sort of like using the wind. Like I said, I have no idea if you could, but there may be creative solutions within,
To recycle the energy so that
Right.
as you disperse
Right.
it, like a hybrid car,
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that actually across the U.S., where some of the data centers or companies that are using the energy are trying to figure out resources that then feed back into the community, so they're not just using the power.
I think the broader topic is like cogeneration or something
Yes.
like that. And
Exactly.
yeah, it's exactly.
but yeah.
Okay, well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists, Michelle, Strat, Christina, our moderator, Kiescent, for such an engaging conversation. And thank you all for showing up for our provoking question and your provoking questions you've asked. I mentioned that we're hosting 8 of these events. The next one is Vibe Coding, and that will happen at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library in Manhattan. You can register for that event by going to the link on your handout. We also have 7 of the 8 panels posted. The 8th one is a biggie, so that will be posted soon. I would also like to sincerely thank Women Tech Exchange and their wonderful staff, and our dedicated NYPL staff who have helped make tonight possible, or this afternoon possible. Richard Jones, Cameron, Leah, Louisa, Ryan, Heather, Sala, the branch staff, securities, facilities, Park Boulevard, our comms team, and so many more. Please take a moment to complete our survey before you go. Scan that. What we're doing is, when you take this survey, we really want your feedback so that the programming that we provide to you in September is geared towards what you want to see in your communities. That way you've got the programs you feel are critical. And I hope you stop by and get a library card while you're here. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Everyone.